The wine inside Lestate smells like money. Not paper, but deep. Old money, the kind that smells like damp earth. Old leather and a faint hint of cherries. It's a smell I've learned to associate with the murmur of men who own buildings and the bright, brittle laughter of women who have never worked a double. From my station, I had a clear view of both. Table 4 was on their second bottle of a $200 Barolo. Table 9 was complaining that their truffle oil wasn't assertive enough. And I, Ava Torres, was standing here in a starchy clean apron, smiling until my face ached, with exactly 67 cents in my bank account. Outside the plate glass window, New York was trying to drown itself. It was a cold, miserable November rain, the kind that feels personal. The city lights blurred into watercolor smears on the glass, and right on the edge of the polished brass railing that separated our patio from the sidewalk, a shape was huddled. It was a crack in the perfect, expensive illusion, a smudge on the glass. It was an old woman, so thin she looked like a bundle of wet rags. She wasn't begging. She was just existing, cringing against the wind, her gray hair plastered to her skull. Torres! I jumped, my tray rattling. Greg Halpern materialized beside me, his presence like a drop of cold oil. Greg loved his title shift manager. He was a man who clearly peaked in high school and was now taking it out on the rest of us. One passive-aggressive comment at a time. "Table 7, he hissed, not even looking at me, but at the table in question. "They've been nursing that one glass of Sauvignon Blanc for 25 minutes. This isn't a public library. Turn the table, Torres. Your numbers were down 3% last week." My stomach clenched. 3%. That's what I was worth. Not the 8 years I'd spent in this industry. Not the hospitality degree I'd had to put on ice. Not the fact that I could carry 6 plates on one arm, 3%. "Yes, Greg, I'll check on them," I said, the smile snapping back onto my face like a rubber band. "See that you do. We're a team here. We all have to pull our weight." He smoothed his silk tie and glided away, a petty shark in a sea of oblivious whales. I breathed out, slow. Pull my weight. My weight was currently $16,800 in medical debt, courtesy of the heart attack that had nearly taken my abuela back in Texas. That, plus my rent, plus the money I wired home every Friday. This job, this palace of assertive truffle oil in $200 bottles, was the only thing keeping us all from going under. Losing a shift wasn't an option. Losing the job was unthinkable. I went to table 7, offered more wine, they declined, offered dessert, they declined, and finally, with a smile that felt like it was cracking my teeth, I dropped the check, they paid, and left me a $5 tip on a $90 bill. Standard. I bussed the table, my movements fast, automatic, but my eyes kept slipping back to the window, back to the woman. She was shaking now, a fine, violent tremor. She looked lost, not just homeless, but deeply, terrifyingly lost. She looked like my abuela. "Don't be stupid, Ava." That was the voice of survival, the voice that paid the bills. "Look away. It's not your problem. You bring that problem in here, and you'll be out on the street with her." Greg was watching me from the hostess stand. He knew I was looking. He tapped his watch. He wanted me moving, greeting the new party he was seating in my section. I turned, forced the smile, and headed for the new table. "Good evening. Welcome to Lestate. Can I start you with some—" My voice died. The woman outside had pressed her forehead against the glass. Her eyes were closed, her face pale and waxy in the neon-drenched rain. She wasn't just cold. She was in trouble. Something inside me broke. It was a small, quiet snap. The 3%, the $90 tab, the $16,800, it all just evaporated. I walked past my new table. I heard Greg call my name. "Torres," his voice sharp with warning. I ignored him. I walked to the heavy oak door. I pulled the brass handle. The cold, wet air hit me like a slap, carrying the smell of street cart hot dogs and sewer steam. The woman flinched when the door opened, her eyes flying open. They were blue, clouded with confusion, but terrified. "Ma'am," I said softly, crouching down. My starched apron was already getting soaked. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She just stared at me. "Cold?" she whispered. Her voice was a dry rattle. "I know. Come inside. Just for a minute. Come on." I slipped my arm under hers. She weighed nothing. She was just bones and wet wool. I didn't lead her through the main dining room. God, no. I pulled her toward the service corridor, a small, blind alcove near the kitchen doors, hidden from the diners by a heavy velvet curtain. It was warm there, and it smelled like baking bread and garlic. I sat her down on a low stool we used for polishing silverware. She was shivering so hard her teeth were chattering. "Stay here. Don't move," I ordered gently. I darted to the POS terminal, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could feel Greg's eyes on me. I knew he was watching. I ignored him. I pulled the cash from my apron, my night's tips so far. About $43, I punched in an order. Zuppa del giorno, focaccia, extra side, bottled water, no ice. Total $14.50. I paid in cash, hit print, and walked straight to the kitchen window. "Chef, I need that soup. Now," I said, sliding the ticket. Marco, the line cook, raised an eyebrow but saw the look on my face. He ladled the thick lentil soup into a bowl, added the bread, and slid it onto the pass. "Problem, chica." "Just feed me, Marco," I said, and grabbed the bowl. I brought it back to the alcove. The woman looked up, her eyes fastening on the steam rising from the bowl. I knelt in front of her. "Here, it's hot. Eat it, slowly." She grabbed the spoon, but her hands were shaking too badly. It clattered against the ceramic. I sighed, took the spoon from her, scooped up a small amount, and held it to her lips. "Just eat." She did. She ate with a desperate, silent hunger that made my throat close up. She ate 2 spoonfuls, then 3. The color was starting to come back to her face. And that's when Greg found us. He didn't yell. It was worse. His voice was a low, disgusted hiss that cut through the kitchen clatter. "Torres, what do you think you are doing?" I stood up slowly, positioning myself between him and the woman, who had frozen, the spoon halfway to her mouth. She was cold. "Greg, I got her some soup." Greg's face, normally a pale, doughy white, went a deep, blotchy red. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the woman with a kind of revulsion that turned my stomach to ice. "You brought that in here," he said, the words dripping with contempt. "This is a fine dining establishment, not a homeless shelter. Our guests pay $500 for a meal. They don't pay to look at filth." "She's a person, Greg," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "She's just hungry." "I don't care what she is. Get her out now, before a guest sees." "No?" The word hung in the air. Greg's eyes snapped to mine. He hadn't expected that. I hadn't expected it. "What did you just say to me?" "I said no," I repeated, feeling a strange, cold calm settle over me. The $16,800 suddenly seemed very far away. "She's going to finish her soup. Then I'll help her find a shelter." Greg was sputtering. His little bubble of power popped. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You're fired, Torres. You're fired. Get your things and get out." The words hit me, but they felt dull. "You're firing me for giving a cold woman a $9 cup of soup." "I'm firing you for insubordination, for endangering the health code, for sullying the brand." He was yelling now, and a few of the kitchen staff had paused, watching. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper. "And I'm going to make sure you never work in this town again. You know how many managers I know. You'll be blacklisted. You won't even be able to get a job washing dishes. Now get out of my restaurant." Blacklisted. The word was a death sentence. It meant no income. It meant Abuela's pills wouldn't get refilled. It meant eviction. All my survival instincts screamed at me to apologize, to beg, to drag the woman out into the rain myself. I looked down at her. She was terrified, her eyes wide, staring at Greg like he was a monster. I took a deep breath. I turned back to Greg. "Fine. I took the remaining $28 and change from my apron pocket and threw it on the floor at his feet. That's for the soup and the brand. I turned my back on him. I knelt by the woman. "Come on, sweetheart," I said, my voice soft again. "Let's get you out of here. This place has lost its appetite." I helped her to her feet. She was still trembling, but she clung to my arm. I led her out the service door, into the relative quiet of the alleyway. The rain was still pouring, but at least we were under an awning. She looked up at me, her mind still somewhere else. She was looking past me, through the alley, toward the street, as if watching for someone. "He was supposed to," she muttered, her brow furrowing. "I'm late." "It's okay," I soothed, thinking she was just delirious. "It's okay. Do you have somewhere to go?" She grabbed the front of my shirt, her grip surprisingly strong. Her blue eyes suddenly focused on mine, sharp and clear for just a second. "You have to tell him," she whispered, her voice urgent. "Tell who, ma'am?" She looked around, frightened. "Teo," she breathed. "My Teo Mateo. He's coming. He'll find me." My heart ached. Teo, Mateo, a son, a husband, a ghost, someone who wasn't here. "Okay," I said, just to gentle her. "Okay, I'll tell him if I see him." I dug into my coat pocket. Past my own useless, dead-in-the-water hospitality textbooks, I had one emergency $20 bill. I pressed it into her hand. "There's a shelter on 42nd, St. Jude's. Take a cab, please. Don't stay out here." She clutched the money and just stared at me. Her eyes clouded over again. Then she shuffled off down the alley, a small, gray ghost disappearing into the rain. I stood there for a long time, the steam from the kitchen vents washing over me. I was soaked. I was jobless. I was blacklisted. All for a bowl of soup. I pulled my thin coat tighter. The wine inside Lestate's smelled like money. The alley I was standing in just smelled like rain and garbage. And for the first time all night, I could finally, truly breathe. The call came at 2:13 in the morning. I hadn't slept in 2 days. The air in my penthouse office was stale, tasting of cold coffee and the specific, metallic tang of fear. My mother was missing. Elena Romano, the woman who had survived 50 years of this life with her grace intact, was now wandering the streets, her mind a beautiful, broken mosaic, slipping away from her and from me. My logistics empire, my control over the docks, my name, none of it mattered. I couldn't find my mother. "Boss?" Luca Bianchi's voice was flat, professional, cutting through the static on the secure line. "We have a hit. Midtown, a doorman at Lestate reported a disturbance. 9 o'clock. An elderly woman matching her description was forced out of the restaurant." Forced out. I was moving before he finished the sentence. "Lestate. The place on 54th, we supply their wine, don't we? And their produce, and their linens, boss, through 3 different holding companies. Good." I grabbed my overcoat. The fabric was cashmere, but it felt like armor. "Get the car. I want to talk to the manager who was on duty." "He's still there. Name's Greg Halpern, closing the books." "He can wait?" The drive from Lower Manhattan to Midtown was silent. Luca handled the sedan like it was an extension of himself, slicing through the empty, rain-slicked streets. I stared at the blurred lights. My mother, Elena, the woman who taught me how to read, how to negotiate my first deal, how to tell a Barolo from a Chianti, huddled in the rain, forced out. Lestate was dark when we arrived, save for a few dim lights in the back office. The heavy oak doors that Ava Torres had pushed open hours earlier were now locked. Luca didn't bother knocking. He used a small, metallic tool, and the lock clicked open with an expensive, useless snick. We walked into the main dining room. The air was thick with the ghosts of the night service stale wine, expensive perfume, and the faint, acrid smell of cleaner. A man in a cheap, overly tight suit looked up from a desk, his eyes wide with alarm. He had a doughy face and the weak, cruel mouth of a man who enjoyed the small power he'd been given. This was Greg Halpern. "Hey, we're closed," he yelped, standing up, trying to look imposing. "This is private property. I'm calling the police." Luca simply moved to stand in front of the door, and he didn't say anything. He just existed. Greg's bravado evaporated. "Who are you? What do you want?" I didn't sit. I walked slowly toward him, my hands in my coat pockets. "I'm Matteo. I own the trucks that bring your food and your wine and the sheets you put on your tables." I paused, letting him connect the dots. "I'm here about the old woman." Greg's face cycled through confusion, then dawning comprehension, and then disgustingly a sycophantic eagerness to please. He thought I was a high-profile customer, angry about the clientele. "Oh, that," he said, forcing a laugh. "Mr. Matteo, sir, I'm so sorry you had to hear about that. It was handled. I handled it personally." My blood went cold. "You handled it when—" "Absolutely," he said, puffing up, desperate to impress. "It was a complete breach of brand standards. One of my waitresses, Ava Torres. Total liability, she actually brought the creature inside. Can you imagine in here? Where people are paying top dollar? I had to terminate her on the spot. Of course. Zero tolerance for that kind of behavior. We maintain a certain standard at Lestate. I protected the brand." I looked at him. I saw every bully I'd ever known. Every petty tyrant who stepped on the weak to feel strong. He had used the word creature. He had called my mother filth. And he had fired the one person who had shown her kindness. "You protected the brand," I repeated. My voice was quiet. Luca knew that quiet. It was the moment before the storm. "Yes, sir, absolutely." I took my phone out. I dialed my logistics chief. "Anthony, it's Matteo. Our contract with Lestate. It's terminated, effective immediately. Stop the trucks, all of them. The produce rotting on the dock. That's their problem." I hung up before Anthony could reply. Greg's face went white. "What you can't do that we have a contract." I dialed my legal head. "Maria, I'm at Lestate on 54th. I want a full audit of their books. I want the health department here at 8 a.m. I want every vendor violation, every overtime discrepancy, every single infraction on their record pulled. By sunrise. Yes, I'm serious." This is insane," Greg shouted, panic setting in. "Who do you think you are?" "That old woman," I said, stepping closer, my voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than his shout. "The one you kicked into the rain. The creature you were so disgusted by. That was Elena Romano. That was my mother." The color drained from Greg's face. He looked like he was going to be sick. Right there on the polished herringbone floor. He stumbled backward, collapsing into his office chair. "I didn't know I had no idea." "No," I said. "You didn't. You just saw someone small, and you decided to crush them. And then," I added, the cold fury solidifying into something hard and sharp, "you crushed the one girl who tried to help." I looked at his desk. "The employee file. For Ava Torres. I want it." That's private personnel information." Luca took one step toward him. Greg fumbled with a drawer and threw the file onto the desk. I picked it up. "Ava Torres, 26, address in Queens." I looked at him. "You didn't just fire her. You threatened her. Didn't you? You told her you'd blacklist her." Greg was trembling, speechless. "You took away her living," I said softly. "A lesson in empathy? Greg, you should have taken it. Now you're going to get one." I turned and walked out. Luca followed, closing the door quietly behind us, leaving Greg Halpern alone in the dark with the ruins of his small, petty kingdom. In the car, under the dim glow of the cabin light, I read Ava Torres's file. It was thin. No disciplinary actions until tonight. Dependable. Good reviews from her previous job. A note at the bottom, emergency contact. Maria Torres, El Paso, Texas, grandmother. "Luca," I said, my voice rough. "I want a background check. On her, Ava Torres. I want to know everything, but I want it quiet. No footprints. Understand?" "Understood, boss, by morning." Luca was better than his word. By 6 a.m. As the first gray light hit my office window, The report was on my desk. It wasn't a police file. It was a life. Ava Torres, 26, dropped out of a hospitality management program at CUNY 2 years in. Reason financial. Her grandmother, Maria, had a massive heart attack 8 months ago. Ava had taken on the debt, $16,800. She was working 2 jobs l'estate and a late-night stalking gig at a 24-hour bodega in her neighborhood. No social media presence, no boyfriend, no criminal record, just work and debt. She had lost her high-paying job, the one keeping her abuela alive, for a $14.50 bowl of soup. I picked up my secure phone. I made a call to the chief administrator at the hospital in El Paso, a man who owed his hospital's new pediatric wing to a very generous, very anonymous donation from one of my legit foundations. "I have a name," I said. "Maria Torres, patient last spring. There's an outstanding balance, $16,800. I want it gone. Wipe it. An error in the system. A donation from a benevolent fund. I don't care how. It just disappears, and it is never, ever traced back to me. Am I clear?" "Crystal, Mr. Romano." I hung up. That was the easy part. The debt was just numbers. The job was the problem. "Boss," Luca said, entering the office with 2 coffees, "the Halpern problem is compounding. He's already made calls. Word is out on the restaurant circuit. Ava Torres is trouble. Theft. Insubordination. She's radioactive. She's been sending out resumes all morning. She's getting rejections within minutes." I cursed, running a hand over my face. Greg's petty spite was moving faster than my systemic solutions. She was still exposed, and now she was exposed to him. "And, boss," Luca's voice was heavy. I looked up. "Victor Carbone's crew. They've been asking questions. They were at l'estate this morning, talking to the kitchen staff after the health inspectors left. They're asking about an old woman and a waitress who got fired. Victor Carbone, a snake who dealt in human misery, a rival who saw my attempts to legitimize the family name as weakness. He saw my missing mother as leverage, and now he saw Ava Torres as a pawn. He was setting a trap, and she was the bait. I had tried to fix this from a distance. I had tried to give her an invisible favor, but I had failed. I had inadvertently painted a target on her back. By trying to protect her quietly, I had made her interesting to the one man I never wanted her to meet. "Find her," I said. "She's at the bodega. Her shift ends in 20 minutes. We're going to Queens. Get the car. And Luca, I don't want to scare her. We do this my way, softly." We waited. The street in Queens was quiet, the air damp and cold. I watched her walk out of the bodega. She looked exhausted, smaller than I expected. She was wearing a thin coat, the same one from the alley, probably. She clutched her bag like a lifeline and started walking toward her apartment, her head down. I motioned to Luca. He got out of the car first, a tall, imposing man in a perfect suit, stepping out of a $70,000 sedan onto a cracked, littered sidewalk. It was the wrong picture, and I knew it. "Miss Torres." She jumped, spinning around. Her hand flew to her pocket, and I saw the glint of keys lace through her fingers like a weapon. Smart. She was a survivor. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice wary, tired but not weak. "My name is Luca Bianchi. My employer would like a word with you. He's right here." He gestured to the car. I stepped out, leaving my coat open, my hands visible. She looked at me. Her eyes, I'd expected fear. There was fear. Yes. But there was also defiance. This was the woman who had said no to Greg Halpern, knowing it would cost her everything. "I don't know you," she said. "You don't," I agreed, my voice low. I didn't move closer. "My name is Matteo Romano, the woman you helped last night, the woman you bought soup for." Her expression tightened. She thought I was here to complain, too. "That was my mother," I said. Her face didn't relax, but the defiance shifted into confusion. "She was lost," Ava said. "She kept saying your name." "She's been unwell. I've been looking for her." I took a step closer. "You lost your job because of her. Because of me. I know what that manager, Halpern, did. I know what he's doing now. The blacklist. So what? She shot back. Are you here to give me my job back because I don't want it? No, I said. I'm not. Your former manager is handling his own problems. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a business card. It was thick. Heavy cardstock. Cream-colored. It had no name. Just a 10-digit number. I don't want your money, she said, eyeing the card like it was a snake. Good, because I'm not offering any. I held it out. That man took your livelihood. He did it because you showed my family kindness. That's a debt, and my family pays its debts. This isn't money, Miss Torres. This is justice. She stared at me, then at the card, then back at me. She didn't understand. She didn't know who I was. Not really. She didn't know about Victor Carbone, or the audits, or the $16,800 that was already vanishing from her ledger. She just knew she was tired, and a man in a very expensive car was offering her a cryptic promise on a rainy street in Queens. Slowly, her fingers unlaced from her keys, she reached out and took the card. The card was heavy in my hand, heavier than 26 years of living paycheck to paycheck. It was cream-colored, thick as cardboard, and completely blank except for the 10-digit number pressed into the paper. It felt like a trap. I looked from the card to the man, Matteo Romano. He stood in the damp street lamp glow, all quiet power and expensive wool. He wasn't like the men at Lestate, all loud laughter and fragile egos. He was a stone dropped into the middle of my life. Justice, I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. What does that mean? You send your giant friend Luca to talk to Greg? Is that your justice? I tried to hand the card back to him. Mr. Romano, I appreciate you coming here. I'm glad your mother is okay, but I didn't give her soup in exchange for a favor. I did it because she was cold and hungry. I pushed the card at him. Kindness isn't a transaction. I don't want your money, and I don't want your justice. I just want to find another job. He didn't take the card. His eyes, dark and unreadable, held mine. Greg Halpern already made sure you can't, he said, his voice flat. The blacklist is real. He's proud of it. You won't get hired anywhere in this city's network. He looked at my apartment building, a rundown pre-war with peeling paint. Keep the card, Miss Torres. You may find that being left alone isn't an option anymore. Not after tonight. He nodded, a sharp, almost formal gesture. He and Luca got back into the black sedan. It was so quiet it barely made a sound as it disappeared down the street. I was left standing on the wet pavement, my shift over, my life in freefall, clutching a blank card that felt like it weighed 100 pounds. The next 48 hours proved him right. I was blacklisted. It wasn't just a threat, it was a wall. I sent out 43 applications online. I walked into 12 different restaurants, resume in hand. The online applications were met with instant, automated rejections. Thank you for your interest, but the position has been filled. The in-person visits were worse. I knew some of these managers. I'd worked benefits with them, shared taxis with them. Ava, how are you? Said the manager at the Beacon, a man I'd known for 3 years. I'm good, Frank. I heard you had an opening for a floor manager. His smile froze. It didn't fall. It just froze. Oh, that, I think we just filled that. Yeah, just about 5 minutes ago. Sorry, kid. Good to see you. He turned away before I could even say goodbye. 5 minutes ago, right. Greg's poison was fast, and it was potent. I was radioactive. The bodega stocking job paid minimum wage. It was enough for ramen, or the light bill, or my subway card. It wasn't enough for all three. And it was nowhere near enough for Abuela's medical bills. The $16,800 felt like a concrete block tied to my ankles. Then, the second boot dropped. My phone rang. It was Mr. Petrov, my landlord. He never called, he only texted. In all caps, rent due. Ava, he said, his voice slick with a fake friendliness that made my skin crawl. Big problems, big problems, the boiler, and the city taxes, and the insurance. Everything, it's just going up. Mr. Petrov, I paid my rent on the 1st. It cleared. Yes, you're a good girl. But circumstances change. I'm afraid I have to raise the rent, effective immediately. My stomach turned to ice. Immediately, how much? Let's see a modest increase. Just $300 a month. I gripped the phone. $300. You can't do that. That's not legal. You have to give me notice. It's an unsecured lease. Sweetheart, he cooed. You read the fine print. I don't have to give you 30 days. I just have to give you reasonable notice. This is reasonable. I need the new security deposit and the new rate by Friday, or you're out by the 1st of next month. Sorry. Dorogaya, business is business. He hung up. I stared at the wall. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't a coincidence. The blacklist, the rent hike, this was a coordinated squeeze. Greg didn't have this kind of power. Someone else was pulling the strings. Someone wanted me broken. I spent the next night walking back from the bodega at 3 in the morning. My brain was a frantic hamster wheel of bad math. Sell my laptop, call Abuela, and tell her I can't send money. I'd rather sleep on the subway. A car pulled up beside me, moving at my pace. It wasn't the silent, black sedan. This was a pearl-white Escalade, loud and bright with spinning rims that screamed, "Look at me." The passenger window hummed down. A man in a silk tracksuit smiled at me. His teeth were too white. "Ava Torres," he called out, his voice friendly. "Tough break you got. It's cold out here." I kept walking. Keys between the fingers. Don't engage. Come on, he said, and the car door opened. He got out, blocking my path. He was younger than Mateo, flashier, with a gold chain thick as my wrist. "I hear you're looking for work, and I hear your landlord's being a real piece of work." My blood chilled. "I don't know you." "No, but I know you," he said, still smiling. "My name's Victor Carbone, and I know your new friend, Mateo Romano, or at least I know of him. Thinks he's a damn prince. Thinks his business doesn't stink." He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne. It was sweet and overpowering. "I hear he paid you a little visit, gave you his private number. He seems awful interested in the waitress who found his crazy old mom." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my voice shaking. But I stood my ground. "Yeah, you do. Listen, kid, I'm going to make this simple. You're in a bad spot. I can fix it." He pulled a thick envelope from his pocket. "This is $5,000, cash, just a hello. Your landlord problem. It'll disappear. Tonight, that debt you got down in Texas wiped clean." I stared at the envelope. $5,000. "What do you want?" I whispered. "Just talk," he said, shrugging. "Mateo calls you. You tell me. You see him. You tell me where. He's planning something. I want to know what it is. You just be my friend. Ava. In exchange, I'll give you a job managing one of my nightclubs. $10,000 a month. Under the table. You'll be set." $10,000 a month. It was a lifeline. It was Abuela's safety. It was breathing room. All I had to do was what betray the man who had, at least, apologized. I looked at Victor Carbone's smiling, reptilian face. He was offering me a golden cage. "I'd rather starve," I spat. The smile vanished. It didn't fade. It snapped off, like a light. "Bad choice. Chica," he hissed. "You think you're better than this. You're just a pawn, a little brown pawn in a big white game. And you're on the wrong side of the board. You think Romano's justice is clean. You're just something he's going to use and throw away. Pawns get sacrificed. You remember that." He got back in the Escalade. It peeled out, leaving a cloud of exhaust and the smell of burning rubber. I ran the rest of the way home, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would break a rib. The next night, I was a wreck. I had to go to work at the bodega. I couldn't afford not to. I took the subway, my shoulders hunched, my eyes darting to every face. Every man looked like Victor. Every car looked like the Escalade. I got off at my stop in Queens. It was 10 p.m. The platform was mostly empty. The street outside was dark. One of the overhead lights was shattered. I walked fast, my keys already woven through my fingers. A van turned the corner. a gray, windowless cargo van. It screeched to a halt right in front of me, blocking the sidewalk, its side door sliding open before it even stopped moving. 4 men, black masks, black hoodies. My throat closed. This wasn't a mugging, this was him. "Get in the van, girl, nice and easy, and you don't get hurt." One of them growled, stepping toward me. I didn't scream. I ran, back toward the station. I heard his footsteps pounding behind me. He was fast. He grabbed the strap of my messenger bag. I spun with the pull, dropping my weight, and drove my elbow backward, aiming for his face. I connected with something hard, his nose. I heard a wet crack and a howl of pain. But the momentum sent me stumbling. Another man grabbed my jacket, yanking me off my feet. He was strong. He began dragging me toward the open van door. I jammed my hand into my pocket, fumbling for my phone. My fingers were numb. Click, 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 click. I hit the side button 5 times, the emergency 911 call. I knew it was useless. They'd be gone in 60 seconds. "Stupid," the man holding me snarled, twisting my arm behind my back. I was 3 feet from the van. I was going in. Screech. A wave of headlights, so bright they were blue, washed over us. A black sedan, Mateo's sedan, had come from nowhere, mounting the curb, slamming to a stop to block the van. A second sedan, identical, pinned it from behind. The man holding me froze. Luca Bianchi got out of the driver's side. He wasn't the polite, stoic driver anymore. He moved with a liquid, predatory grace. He wasn't armed, not visibly, but the way he held himself was more threatening than any weapon. The man holding me saw him, saw the second car, and understood. The odds had just changed. "Let her go!" Luca's voice was a low growl, barely audible, but it cut through the night. The man holding my arm didn't argue. He shoved me, hard. I fell to the pavement, my knee exploding in pain as it hit the concrete. The 4 men scrambled back into their van like rats. The van's engine roared. It slammed in reverse, hit the second sedan, and then peeled out, driving over the sidewalk to get away. Silence. My phone was still lit up on the ground, the 911 call finally connecting. "Emergency services," a tinny voice said. "What is your location?" Luca walked over. He looked down at the phone, then at me. He calmly reached down, picked it up, and ended the call. "They were never going to make it, Miss Torres," he said. He offered me his hand. It was steady. I was shaking so hard I couldn't breathe. "You were following me," I whispered. "He made you a target," Luca said simply. "We're going to fix it. You need to come with us. You're not safe here." I looked at my bleeding knee. I looked at the dark street where the van had disappeared. I looked at his outstretched hand. I had no choice. I took it. He drove me to Brooklyn Heights, to a quiet street lined with billion-dollar brownstones. We didn't go in the front door. We went through a garden-level gate, into a unit that was probably a safe house. It was beautiful, warm. It smelled like old books and lemon polish. Mateo Romano was waiting. He was alone. He was in a dark sweater and jeans, not a suit. He looked worried. "Ava," he said, dropping the Miss Torres. He stopped a good 10 feet away from me. "I'm sorry. This is my fault. I tried to fix your debt. I tried to fix your job. All I did was put a spotlight on you for Victor Carbone. He tried to take me." "I know. He wanted leverage. He wanted you." He motioned to Luca, who brought a first aid kit. Mateo knelt, right there on the rug, and opened it. "This wasn't supposed to touch you." "Your mother," I said, my voice shaking. "Is she—" "She's safe. We found her. She was at St. Michael's, the church downtown. She's here. She wanted to see you." The old woman, Elena, walked in from a back room. She was clean, her gray hair soft, wearing a warm robe. Her eyes were clear. She looked at me, and her face lit up with a smile that was pure sunshine. "You," she whispered. She came right to me and took both my hands in hers. They were warm. "You were the angel in the storm, the girl with the soup." "I'm glad you're safe, Elena," I murmured. She looked at Mateo, then back at me. Her expression was firm. "I told him. she said, her voice strong. I told him what you did, and I told him you can't buy it. You don't turn a blessing into a transaction. It ruins the gift. Mateo stood up, nodding. My mother is the conscience of this family. Ava, she's right. I can't pay you for what you did. Carbone will just find another way to get to you. The blacklist, the landlord, that was all him, trying to push you toward him. He wanted you as an informant. So what now? I asked, looking at my ruined jeans. Do I just hide here for the rest of my life? No, Mateo said. He picked up a thick, leather-bound folder from a nearby desk and handed it to me. You fight back, but not my way. Your way. I opened it. It was a full-blown business proposal. The Hearth Network, I read aloud. I've been developing it for a year, he said, his voice quiet, intense. A chain of community kitchens, not soup lines, dignified dining, real plates, real tables, waitstaff. We give people a meal, but more importantly, we give them respect. We give them a place to be seen. My words? From the alley, we see you. It's funded entirely through my legitimate holdings, he went on. The logistics companies, the real estate division, it's clean. Ava, 100% clean, audited, separate. I looked up, confused. What does this have to do with me? I need someone to run it, he said. I need an executive director, someone who understands what it means, someone who isn't afraid of the Greg Halperns of the world, someone who, when faced with the choice, defaults to kindness. I stared at the proposal. It was a lifeline. It was everything I'd ever wanted to do with my hospitality degree. But it was him. I can't, I whispered, closing the folder. It's a golden leash. It's a moral debt. I'll be working for you. I'll be tangled in all of this. In Victor Carbone, in vans and men in masks. I can't. I expected him to be angry. He just looked sad. It was Elena who stepped forward. She put her hand on my shoulder. Child, she said gently, look at me. You are already tangled. The moment you opened that restaurant door for me, you stepped into this fight. The world is run by men like Greg and men like Victor. What my son is offering you, it isn't a leash, it's a shield, and it's a sword. She smiled, her eyes crinkling. Besides, you already did the hardest part, the part I'm not sure even I could have done. What was that? You saw another human being, she said. Don't stop now. I held the leather-bound proposal in my hands. It was a shield. It was a sword. It was also, I knew, a gilded cage if I wasn't careful. I looked up from the business plan, the Hearth Network, and met Mateo Romano's steady, dark gaze. Elena stood beside me, her hand a warm, reassuring weight on my shoulder. I'll do it, I said. My voice didn't shake. I'd lost my job, my apartment was threatened, and I'd just been nearly thrown into a van. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it had been burned clean by a new, harder anger. Mateo nodded, a flicker of relief in his eyes. Good. Luca will arrange. On 3 conditions, I cut him off. He stopped. His stillness was absolute. Elena's hand squeezed my shoulder, just once, in support. First, I said, tapping the proposal, financial transparency, total. I want a separate, independently audited account for the Hearth Network. Your money, your legitimate money, goes in. I control how it comes out, and the audit reports are made public every quarter. Done, he said, without blinking. Second, no commingling ever. I don't want a single dollar that comes from anything else touching this project. If I even smell it, I walk. I gave you my word. It's clean. My third condition, I said, and this was the hardest one. This cannot be a front. It cannot be a cover for your other business, and it cannot be a bargaining chip. You, your men, your associates. You don't use Hearth as a meeting place. You don't use it for leverage. You don't use it for anything but what it's for feeding people. This is a bright line. Mr. Romano, you cross it, and I will be the first one to call the press and burn it and you to the ground. The silence in the brownstone was heavy. I had just threatened a man who, I was beginning to understand people did not threaten. Mateo watched me for a long, heavy moment. He wasn't angry. He was measuring me. Then, a very slow, very faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. It didn't reach his eyes, but it was there. "You have my word, Miss Torres," he said. He extended his hand. "As my mother said, this is not a transaction. This is a partnership. You are the executive director. I am your first investor." I took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and dry. It was a deal. "One last piece of business," he said, pulling his hand back and reaching for his phone. "The Greg Halpern problem." "What about him?" "He's been dealt with," Mateo said, his voice going flat and cold again. "He made a series of calls this morning to every single name in his network. He explained that his allegations against you were a complete misunderstanding, a result of personal stress. He has reclassified your file as priority rehire, exceptional employee." As if on cue, my phone, which I'd left on the table, buzzed. It was an email from Frank, the manager at the Beacon. "Ava, great news. That floor manager spot just opened back up. Are you available to talk tomorrow?" My phone buzzed again and again, text messages, emails. The blacklist had just become a flood of invitations. The power of a single phone call from the right or wrong person. I picked up my phone. I looked at the email from Frank. I remembered his frozen smile. The lie he told so easily. I hit delete. "I'm afraid I'm not available," and I said, looking at Mateo. "I've just accepted a new position. I have an organization to build." We started in Harlem, on a block just south of Morningside Park. The space was an old, failed taqueria, stripped to the studs. It was perfect. The first week was a blur of contractor bids, city permits, and interviews. I wasn't just building a kitchen, I was building an army. My first hire wasn't a manager, it was a chef. His name was Michael Big Mike Evans. He had spent 2 years in the shelter system after losing his restaurant to a fire and his home to the medical bills that followed. He cooked with the kind of soul you only get when food is all you have left. He wept when I offered him the job. "I won't just cook, director," he'd said, his voice thick. "I'll feed them. There's a difference." My second hire was Sarah Jenkins, a coordinator from a local NGO who looked like a librarian but swore like a sailor. She knew every piece of city red tape by heart and how to cut through it. My third was a pro bono lawyer from a downtown firm, a young guy named Ben, who was tired of processing corporate mergers and wanted to do something that matters. We were a motley crew, funded by a silent, invisible investor, and fueled by coffee and a shared, desperate need to make a damn difference. Victor Carbone didn't wait for us to open. The first attack was bureaucratic. 2 men in cheap suits showed up with clipboards, claiming to be from the Department of Health. They were very professional, very intimidating, and their list of violations was a mile long. "This wiring isn't up to code," one said, pointing at a brand new junction box. "And your dry storage, it's not rated for this capacity. You're shut down, effective immediately." I felt the blood drain from my face. This would put us back 6 months. But Sarah, my red tape cutter, just folded her arms. "Which division are you with?" she asked. Her voice pleasant. "Is it the Office of Food Safety or the Bureau of Environmental Health?" The men looked at each other. Food safety." "Funny," Sarah said, pulling out her phone. "Because I'm on the phone with Dave Peterson at Food Safety, and he's never heard of you or a Form 52B violation. Why don't you two wait right here? A couple of detectives are just dying to meet you." They didn't run. They walked. Very, very fast. The second attack was more direct. I was there late, around midnight, rolling paint onto the last wall. Big Mike was in the back, testing the new gas lines for his stoves. I smelled it first. Not gas. Gasoline and smoke. "Mike!" I screamed. I ran to the back alley, where our small dry goods storage shed was. Flames were licking up the side of the wooden door. It wasn't a mistake. Someone had thrown something. Big Mike came barreling out with a fire extinguisher and blasted the door. The flames died with a wet chemical hiss, leaving a charred, stinking mess. No real damage. Nothing lost but a few bags of rice and a lot of our peace of mind. But the message was clear. I can burn you down. Mateo was there in 20 minutes. He didn't come in his sedan. He came in a dark, unremarkable SUV, and he was alone. He walked over to the scorched door. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just touched the blackened wood with his fingertips. He's putting his hands on civilians. Mateo's voice was so low I could barely hear it. It was the quietest, most dangerous sound I had ever heard. He's touching this. It's just a door. Mateo, I said, my voice shaking. He's trying to scare us. He turned to me, his face a mask of cold, controlled fury. He's not just scaring you. Ava, he's testing me. He's showing me that he can get to you, that he can get to this. He motioned to the building. This is not how the game is played. Then we change the game, I said, like stepping in front of him. No, Mateo, don't you dare. You promised. Know that. We don't fight him in the alley. We fight him in the light. He looked at me, his jaw so tight I thought it would crack. He was a bomb, and the fuse was burning. He's not going to stop, he said. Neither am I. Victor's next move was smarter. He went public. A small, influential city blog, the kind that all the political aides read, posted an exposé. Harlem's new charity has dark money ties. It didn't name Mateo, but it named Romano Logistics as the sole funder. It hinted at mob connections. It called me a naive front. The phone calls started. The city food bank was pausing our contract. The volunteer sign-up sheet was suddenly empty. We're dead, Sarah said, dropping her head onto her desk. He just cut our legs out from under us. No, I said. He just gave us a platform. The next morning, I sent out an email to every news desk in the city, and especially to the blogger who wrote the story. Sidewalk press conference, the Hearth Network, 10 a.m., full transparency. I set up a small podium and a portable speaker on the sidewalk, right in front of our half-painted building. A crew from NY1 showed up, more curious than anything. The blogger was there, arms folded, looking smug. I was terrified. My hands were shaking. I wasn't a CEO. I was a waitress. But I stepped up to the microphone. Good morning, I said. My name is Ava Torres. You've heard a lot of rumors about our project, so I'm here to give you the facts. I had Ben, my pro bono lawyer, hand out packets. In this packet, you will find our articles of incorporation as a 501c3. You will find our complete, unredacted bank statements, showing our sole funding source a $1 million grant from the Romano Logistics Benevolent Fund, a legal, registered corporate entity. You will also find our new contract with the city and the personal bios of my entire staff. We are not a front. We are a kitchen. And we are open for questions. The blogger, suddenly looking less smug, raised his hand. But Romano Logistics, everyone knows that name. How can you guarantee this isn't just washing money? You can guarantee it, I said, because you're looking at the audits, and because I'm telling you, my only job here is to run this kitchen, and I will protect its integrity with everything I have. We have nothing to hide. It worked. The NY1 piece that night was positive. New Harlem charity faces down rumors with radical transparency. The city food bank called to unpause our contract. I thought I had won. I was naive. 2 days later, Victor played his trump card. A video appeared online, posted by an anonymous account and instantly picked up by the same blogger. The quality was grainy, like a cell phone recording of a security monitor. The headline, Exclusive Charity Head Ava Torres in Late Night Meeting with Notorious Boss. It was me. It was the night of the kidnapping attempt. But the video was cut. It didn't show the van. It didn't show the men in masks. It just showed me, looking disheveled, talking to Mateo Romano on a dark street, and then getting into his black, expensive car. It was edited to look intimate, secret, like a payoff. The comments were brutal. Knew it was a front. She's his mistress. Sleazy. My phone was exploding. Sarah was crying. Big Mike looked like he wanted to punch a hole in the wall. This was a kill shot. I couldn't fight. I sat in the dark office, staring at the screen. I felt violated. He had taken my moment of terror and twisted it into something ugly. Ava! Mateo's voice was on the phone. I hadn't even heard it ring. Don't look at it. I'm handling this. I'm going to end this. No, I whispered. No, you're right. The game has to change, but you're wrong about who changes it. I hung up on him. I called Luca Bianchi. Luca, I need a favor. The subway station, the night I was attacked. I need the full, unedited camera footage from the platform, and I need it 10 minutes ago. He didn't ask why. Check your email in 5 minutes. It arrived, and I remembered my phone, the 911 call. The police had sent me a copy of the audio for the report I filed. I went online. I went straight to the blogger's post, and I posted a comment. You want the full story? Here it is. I uploaded the full, unedited, time-stamped video from the subway. It showed the van screeching to a halt. It showed the 4 men jumping out. It showed me fighting, elbowing one in the face. It showed me being dragged, and it showed, clear as day, Mateo's cars arriving and scattering them. Then, I uploaded the audio file. My voice, high-pitched, sobbing and screaming. Someone's trying to take me a gray van. Please help. He has my arm. He's pulling me. I added one sentence at the bottom. This is the late-night meeting you're all talking about. This is what Victor Carbone's men did to me. And this is what Mateo Romano saved me from. My name is Ava Torres, and I am not hiding anymore. I hit post. And I sat back, my heart hammering, to watch the entire narrative burn to the ground. The post went live at 2:17 in the morning. For 3 minutes, the internet was silent. Then, the firestorm I'd started began to burn. My phone didn't just buzz, it screamed, it lit up, vibrating so hard it fell off the table. The blogger who had posted the cut video deleted his entire account within 10 minutes. The NY1 reporter was the first to call, his voice frantic. Ava, is this real? The audio, my God, we're running this. This is attempted kidnapping. The narrative didn't just flip, it shattered. By dawn, Victor Carbone wasn't just a rumored figure. He was the man who had ordered 4 thugs to abduct a civilian waitress off the street. My video, the raw footage from the subway, was the #1 trending topic in the city. But I felt no victory. I felt cold. I had won the public. But the public wasn't the man in the white Escalade. I had just, very publicly, declared war on a man who didn't fight with blog posts. We opened Hearth #1 3 days later. It wasn't a grand opening. We didn't cut a ribbon. Big Mike just fired up the stoves at 5 p.m. and unlocked the doors. We called it a soft open. Our goal was 150 servings of his 5-borough chili hot, dignified, and served on real ceramic plates. By 6 p.m., the line was down the block. The NY1 story had been good for us. People weren't just coming for food. They were coming to see the place that had stared down a monster. Director, Big Mike yelled from the kitchen, his face flushed with sweat and pride. The truck from the food bank. It's running late. It was supposed to be here an hour ago with the bread and the reserved produce. It's fine, Mike, I called back, balancing 3 plates. It's rush hour. They'll be here. But they weren't. At 7 p.m., with 50 people still waiting to be seated, Sarah burst out of the office, her face pale. Ava, the truck. It's not the traffic. My stomach dropped. What is it? The driver just called. He's stuck. On the Willis Avenue Bridge. All 4 lanes are blocked. An accident? No, she said, her voice dropping. It's not an accident. 4 white cargo vans, no plates. They're parked sideways, completely blocking the road. He said there are men in masks just standing there. Cops have been called, but they're experiencing delays. It's him, Ava. It's Victor. He's cutting off our food supply. The dining room was full, but the kitchen was running on fumes. We had maybe 20 servings left. He's starving us out, I whispered. He couldn't burn us down. He couldn't smear us, so he was just going to stop the food. The old Ava, the waitress from Lestate, would have cried. The new Ava, the executive director of the Hearth Network, got angry. He thinks he's the only one who controls the streets, I said, untying my apron. He's wrong. I went to the office and grabbed my phone. I didn't call Mateo. This wasn't his fight. This was mine. I had spent 2 months building this place, and I had done it by building a community. It was time to make a call. Rabbi Cohen, I said, my voice sharp. It's Ava Torres. I'm in a bind. Victor Carbone is blocking the food bank truck on the Willis. I have 60 people on the street and nothing to feed them. I'm calling in that favor. I hung up and dialed again. Imam Rahman, it's Ava. I need bread. All of it. Whatever your community kitchen has. My third call, Pastor Dave, I need a miracle, and it needs to come in a casserole dish. As many as you can find, right now. For 10 minutes. Nothing. Then a beaten-up sedan rolled up. Rabbi Cohen's son jumped out, carrying 2 enormous, steaming aluminum trays of brisket and kugel. My mom said your family. He grunted, shoving them at me. She said this is what we do. 2 minutes later, a van from the mosque arrived, the back loaded with over 300 flatbreads, then Pastor Dave's congregation, a procession of minivans, each carrying coolers full of chili, cornbread, and salads. It wasn't one truck. It was 30 different cars, a chaotic, beautiful, interfaith wave of support. Big Mike was crying in the kitchen. It's a miracle, Director. It's Harlem, Mike, I said, grabbing a tray. Now let's feed these people. We didn't serve 150 meals. We served over 200. No one went hungry. We had beaten him. But the blockade was still there. It was a message. The next morning, I put on the nicest blazer I owned. I made 2 calls. The first was to Councilwoman Lee, the woman who had publicly endorsed us after the kidnapping video went viral. The second was to the NY1 reporter. Councilwoman, I said, you wanted to see Hearth in action. How about I show you Victor Carbone's community outreach instead? I met her and the news crew on the corner. We didn't go to Hearth. We drove straight for the Willis Avenue Bridge. They were still there. The same white vans, the same masked thugs, looking arrogant and bored, leaning against the vehicles, causing a 5-mile traffic jam. Then they saw us. They saw the official city council car. They saw the cameraman on the sidewalk. I rolled down my window. Good morning, gentlemen, I called out. Enjoying the view, Councilwoman Lee was just asking me about the city's food distribution partners. I told her you were handling it. Their arrogance evaporated. It was one thing to be a rumor. It was another to be filmed by a news crew in the presence of a city official, actively committing a felony. They scrambled. They weren't tough guys. They were rats in a trap. Within 60 seconds, the van's engines roared to life and they sped off, driving over the median to get away. The NY1 story that night was devastating. Carbone crew blockades food bank truck, attempts to starve Harlem charity, community fights back. Victor Carbone was no longer a ghost. He was an enemy of the people. I got back to Hearth that evening, exhausted but wired. The front door was locked. The lights were off. But one man was waiting for me in the darkened dining room, sitting at a table. Mateo Romano. He wasn't calm. He wasn't the still, quiet stone. He was vibrating. A wire pulled too tight. That was a brilliant move, Ava, he said, his voice a low growl. You used the light. You used the press. You did it your way. He stood up and walked to the window, staring at the street. He's finished in the public eye, but he's not finished. What do you mean? He's a cornered animal now, Mateo said. You've taken away his reputation. All he has left is violence. He won't send thugs for food trucks anymore. He'll send them for you, or for my mother, or for me. He has nothing left to lose. So what do we do? I whispered. I end it, he said. He crossed the line when he put his hands on you. He crossed it again when he blocked food for this place. This is beyond our family rules. This is a federal matter. He's invited the whole world in. My heart hammered. What are you going to do? I'm meeting him, he said. He sent a message. He wants a truce. He's lying. He wants to finish this. So do I. No, I said, grabbing his arm. You can't. That's what he wants. You'll go there, and it'll be an ambush, or you'll do what you do, Matteo, and you'll be just like him, and it will stain this place. It will stain me. He looked down at my hand on his arm. He covered it with his own. His skin was warm. I've already spoken to the U.I.E. attorney's office, he said quietly. The tape you released it was enough for them to open a racketeering investigation. They're just missing one thing, a direct confession. Victor is arrogant. He thinks I'm coming to beg. He'll brag. You're going to wear a wire, I breathed. I'm going to give them the evidence to put him away for the rest of his life. I'm coming with you, I said. Absolutely not. It's at the Red Hook Piers. It's not safe. He'll be expecting you to be cowed, I argued, my mind racing. He won't be expecting me. He sees me as the pawn. He'll get sloppy. He'll say things in front of me he wouldn't say to you. I started this. Matteo, the night I gave your mother that soup, I have to be there when it ends. He stared at me, his dark eyes searching mine. I saw the conflict. The boss wanted me 1,000 miles away. But the man understood. You stay with Luca, he finally said. No matter what, you do not move. The Red Hook Pier was a graveyard of rusted containers, smelling of salt and diesel. It was raining, a cold, miserable drizzle. Luca parked our sedan in the shadows, 200 yards from the clearing. Matteo got out, walking alone into the dim light. He was wearing the wire. Victor arrived in his white Escalade. He got out, flanked by 4 men. Romano, Victor's voice was a sneer, carrying on the wet air. You finally came to bend the knee. Did you bring me a gift? Maybe that little waitress of yours? This ends tonight, Victor. Matteo's voice was calm. You won. The place, it's too much trouble. I'm shutting it down. Victor laughed, a high, barking sound. You're shutting it down. I shut you down. You think you're a king. You're just a glorified grocer. I blocked your little soup kitchen with 4 vans. I tried to grab your little girlfriend. I set fire to your door, and you did nothing. He was confessing. He was giving them everything. And then, one of Victor's men, standing at the edge of the light, lifted his head. He'd seen us. He'd seen the glint of light on Luca's binoculars. Boss, it's a setup. He's got a watcher. Everything happened at once. Victor's face contorted in rage. Kill him, kill them all, get the tape. The night exploded. The sound wasn't a pop like in movies. It was a deafening crack of gunfire. Get down, Luca yelled. Shoving my head below the dashboard, he was out of the car in a second, using the engine block as cover, returning fire with a handgun. Matteo had vanished, diving behind a stack of barrels. The air was full of noise and the whine of ricochets. And then Victor's phone rang. A bright, cheerful, classical tune that cut through the gunfire. Everyone froze for a split second. The shooting paused. Victor, hiding behind his Escalade, looked at his phone, confused. He answered it. What? He went pale. His jaw dropped. We could hear a faint, reedy voice from the phone speaker. Vincenzo. Matteo, reloading behind the barrels, looked up. He knew that voice. It was Elena. Victor was stammering. Elena, I didn't know he crossed into my territory. You forgot. Vincenzo, the voice crackled. You forgot who saved your family when you had nothing. You forgot my husband's generosity. You raised your hand to my son. She had known him from the old neighborhood, before he was Carbone. He was Vincenzo, a kid who owed his life to the Romano family. That moment of hesitation, that single frozen second of a hard man's forgotten past, that's all it took. The sirens weren't distant. They were here. Floodlights blasted the pier, washing it in white, blinding light. FBI, hands in the air, drop your weapons. Victor's men threw their guns down. Victor just stood there, staring at his phone. The blood drained from his face. He had been beaten. Not by Matteo, not by me, but by an old woman's memory. Agents swarmed him, slamming him against the side of the Escalade. Victor Carbone, you are under arrest for attempted murder, racketeering, conspiracy. The adrenaline drained out of me, leaving me shaking. I got out of the car. Luca was leaning against the fender, clutching his shoulder. "Luca, you're hit." "Just a scratch, Director." He grunted, but he was pale. "Got me in the shoulder." Matteo walked out of the shadows. He wasn't looking at Victor being cuffed. He was looking at me. His suit was torn, his face smeared with grime. An FBI agent in a windbreaker clapped him on the good shoulder. "We got it all, Mr. Romano. The wire was hot, a full confession. He's gone for good." Matteo nodded. He had done it. He had had Victor, dead to rights in a firefight. He could have finished it his way, the old way. But he'd held back. He'd waited. He'd chosen my way, the law. He walked over to me, and he didn't say anything. He just stripped off his heavy, expensive overcoat and draped it over my shoulders. It was warm, and it smelled like wool, coffee, and the cold. Metallic tang of the rain. The night at the pier felt like a lifetime ago. The echo of gunfire and sirens faded, replaced by the clang of hammers and the smell of fresh paint. The adrenaline was gone, and in its place was a deep, resonating exhaustion, and something new, purpose. The day after Victor Carbone's arrest, an event that rocked the city's underbelly and made the front page of the Post-Hearth #1 was quiet. Luca, his arm in a clean black sling from the scratch that turned out to be a deep graze, stood by the door. He was my security, my shadow, a silent reminder of the world I had touched. But the fear was gone. Victor's removal wasn't just a win, it was a dam breaking. The city, which had been wary of us, now saw us as heroes. The food bank didn't just unpause our contract. The director himself called, apologizing profusely. "Director Torres," he'd said, his voice slick with newfound respect, "we're looking at a new memorandum of agreement. I think we can increase your allotment by, let's say, 40%. And of course, the delivery blockade, a terrible, terrible thing. We've filed our own report. The supply trucks, which had been our biggest vulnerability, were now our most stable asset. And the volunteers, they came in waves. The interfaith army of Rabbi Cohen, Imam Rahman, and Pastor Dave became a permanent coalition. But new faces showed up every day. College students, off-duty firemen, retired teachers. They didn't just see a soup kitchen, they saw a story. They saw the place that had stared down the dark and won. Then, I got the call I'd been waiting for, though I didn't know it. It wasn't from Matteo. It was from a woman with a crisp, corporate voice, introducing herself as the head of human resources for the Lestate Hospitality Group's parent company. "Miss Torres," she said, "all business. We're calling to follow up on the incident regarding your separation from our Midtown location." "You mean the part where Greg Halpern fired me for feeding a homeless woman?" I asked, wiping sawdust off my desk. The woman cleared her throat. "Yes. Well, following a thorough internal review, Mr. Halpern's employment has been terminated." I stopped. I hadn't expected that. "The Lestate Group," she continued, reading from a script, "is issuing a formal and public apology to you for the unconscionable behavior of our former manager. His actions do not reflect our values." "He blacklisted me," I said, my voice flat. "Yes, about that. We've been made aware that Mr. Halpern is also the subject of a state-level investigation by the Department of Labor regarding numerous harassment claims and wage and hour violations. Several of your former co-workers came forward after he was suspended. It seems you weren't the only one he targeted." So, Greg wasn't just a petty tyrant. He was a corner cutter, a bully, and in the end, just a liability. He hadn't been felled by a mafia boss. He'd been taken down by a stack of paperwork, by the quiet, collective courage of waitresses and busboys who were finally asked the right questions. It was a cleaner, more satisfying justice than anything I could have imagined. The new power dynamic, however, required new rules. Matteo stopped by Hearth about a week later. It was the first time I'd seen him since the pier. He looked different in the daylight, in my world. He wore a simple, dark gray quarter-zip sweater, no suit, no armor. He just looked tired and proud. He walked through the dining room, nodding at the volunteers, his eyes taking in the new tables, the clean floors. "It's incredible, Ava," he said, joining me in the small glass office I'd built. "You've done more in 3 weeks than I've been able to do in a year." "We've been busy," I said, organizing invoices. "Your mother has been a huge help." "I know." He paused, and I could feel the shift. He was moving from investor back to boss. "I've instructed Romano Logistics to handle all of your produce and dry goods deliveries. They'll be here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Gratis. It will cut your food costs by half." I stopped typing. I turned in my chair to face him. "No," I said. He blinked. "No." "No, thank you," I said, my voice polite but firm. "That's not how this works." His brow furrowed. "Ava, it's a gift. It's clean. It's my own trucks." "I know, and I appreciate it, but Hearth has to be independent, not just on paper. Actually independent." I took a deep breath. This was the moment. From now on, Matteo, Romano Logistics is a vendor, just like everyone else. If you want our business, you'll bid for the contract, you'll submit an invoice, and I will pay it, out of our audited accounts, just like I pay Big Mike's meat supplier and the linen company. I held his gaze. "You told me this was a partnership. Partners don't give handouts. They sign contracts. I need an arm's-length relationship. Matteo, it's the only way to protect this place. It's the only way to protect me." I had just refused a gift worth hundreds of thousands of dollars from the one man in New York. "You didn't refuse." He stared at me, his face unreadable. He was calculating. He was measuring the bright line I had drawn. Finally. He nodded. "Send my logistics manager the request for proposal," he said, his voice all business. "We'll see if our numbers are competitive." A slow smile spread across my face. "I'll have Sarah send it this afternoon." He smiled back, a real one, this time. It reached his eyes. Understood, director. With the new boundaries set, the work of building Hearth began in earnest. I finally had the space to implement the ideas I'd scrawled in notebooks during my 2 years of college, the dignified dining standard. It was simple. We didn't have a line. We had a host stand. Elena, as it turned out, was born for the job. She had refused to stay in the Brooklyn Heights brownstone. "It's too quiet," she'd complained. "It's a beautiful tomb. I need to hear people." She'd found a small, bright, one-bedroom apartment 3 blocks from Hearth, and every night from 5 to 9, she was our host. She stood at the door, her gray hair in a neat bun, and she didn't just seat people, she welcomed them. "Ah, Mr. Johnson," she'd say to a man coming in from the cold. "Your usual table is ready. How is your daughter's cough?" We used real plates, we used real silverware, and we used cloth napkins. I had bought 3,000 of them, used from a hotel auction site. Our volunteers spent 2 hours every afternoon ironing them. "It's not a soup kitchen, Ava," Big Mike said to me one night, his voice thick as he looked over the full dining room. "It's a restaurant. It's just the customers don't pay." "They pay," I said. "They just pay with their time." And they started to pay it back. Our first dishwasher, a quiet man named Marcus, had been a guest his first week. He'd eaten a full meal, then walked into the kitchen and asked Big Mike if he could help clean up. He'd been on the payroll for a month now. Then the story of Hearth, the real story, not the one about mobsters and bloggers, began to spread. A woman who ate with us on Tuesday came back on Thursday with her teenage son, both of them wearing aprons, ready to volunteer. A local tech startup, one with no ties to Matteo whatsoever, sent a check for $10,000 with a note, "We read about what you're doing. The city needs this." It was the first major donation from outside the Romano umbrella. I framed the check. A local graffiti artist, a kid named Sketch, came by. He'd been watching us for weeks. "I don't have money, Director," he said, shuffling his feet, "but that wall, it's real ugly." "I know," I said. "I don't have a budget for paint." "You don't need one." For 3 nights, he worked under portable lights. He didn't just paint, he created a masterpiece, a huge, sprawling mural across the entire side of the building. It was a collage of faces, old, young, black, white, brown, all the faces you see on the subway, on the street, and woven through them in beautiful, bold, blue script were the words, "You are seen." It became our logo, our promise, our anthem. My life had become a blur of spreadsheets, vendor meetings, and volunteer schedules. I was working 18-hour days. I was exhausted, but it was a good tired. It was the kind of tired that came from building, not just surviving. My relationship with Mateo settled into a new, strange rhythm. He was my investor. My landlord, his real estate company owned the building, and my silent partner, he never interfered, but I knew he was watching. Sometimes, late at night, when I was the last one in the office, drowning in paperwork, his black sedan would just appear out front. He wouldn't come in. He'd just sit there for 20 minutes, an invisible guardian, before driving off. One night, around 1 a.m, I was trying to reconcile the inventory. My brain had turned to mush. I heard a key in the lock. I tensed, but it was just him. He was in his suit this time. His tie loosened. He looked like he'd just come from a long, hard meeting. "You're going to kill yourself, Ava," he said, his voice rough. "I'm fine, just inventory." He walked over to my desk. He didn't look at the papers. He looked at me. He reached out, his hand hovering, and then he just rested it on my shoulder. It wasn't a boss's touch. It wasn't even a friend's. It was just a touch, a connection. Solid, warm. It lasted 5 seconds, and my entire body was aware of the weight and the heat of his hand through my thin shirt. "Go home, Ava," he said softly, and pulled his hand back. "The numbers will be there tomorrow." I nodded, unable to speak. A few nights later, the exhaustion finally won. I was asleep at my desk, my head on a stack of invoices. A gentle shake woke me. It was Elena. "Oh, Kara," she cooed, smoothing my hair back. "This will not do. Come, both of you." I looked up, confused. Mateo was standing in the doorway, his coat on. "What?" "Dinner," he said. "As well, not as equals, as two people who are being ordered by my mother." I walked the 3 blocks with them, the cold night air waking me up. Elena's apartment was tiny, warm, and smelled like garlic and basil. It felt like my abuela's house. At 1:30 in the morning, the 3 of us sat at her tiny kitchen table, which was covered in a red checkered tablecloth. She put a huge bowl of pasta between us. "Eat," she ordered. And we did. We ate pasta and drank cheap red wine from mismatched glasses. We didn't talk about Victor. We didn't talk about the pier or the press or the danger. We talked about the rising cost of bread. We talked about how Big Mike's chili was too spicy. We talked about how Elena's favorite volunteer was quitting because her daughter was having a baby. It was normal. It was the most wonderfully, beautifully normal hour I'd had in months. I looked at Mateo over the rim of my glass. He was laughing at something his mother said, his eyes crinkling at the corners, in the warm light of this tiny kitchen. He wasn't a boss. He wasn't a kingpin. He was just Teo. He caught me looking. His smile faded, but he held my gaze. No words were spoken. No promises were made. But I knew, in that small, quiet apartment, that this was no longer about a debt. It was no longer about justice, or even about hearth. It was about this. This was the start of something else. 6 months after the night at the pier, the air in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, smelled different. It wasn't the diesel and salt of the Red Hook docks or the old money perfume of Lestate. It was the smell of welding shops, fresh pan dulce from the corner panaderia, and the damp, hopeful energy of 1,000 families trying to make it, all crammed into one neighborhood. This was the home of Hearth Number 2. The Harlem location was our flagship, our proof of concept. This was the scale up. We'd taken over a defunct check cashing place, a building that had preyed on the community, and we'd gutted it. Now, it was all bright wood, open windows, and the centerpiece a 30-foot mural of our "You Are Seen" logo, painted by Sketch himself. This branch wasn't for the unhoused, it was for the working poor, the single mothers who drove Uber all night, the day laborers, the families packing into one-bedroom apartments. Today was the grand opening. It was loud. A local high school mariachi band was playing, slightly off-key. Kids were running around with faces painted. It wasn't a charity event, it was a block party. Sarah Jenkins, my iron-willed NGO coordinator, handed me a small index card. "Your notes, Director." I smiled and tucked the card into my pocket. Untouched. I didn't need notes. I stepped up to the small podium. The crowd quieted. I saw Councilwoman Lee in the front row, next to Rabbi Cohen and Imam Rahman. Who had bussed in from Harlem, I saw Big Mike, his arms crossed, beaming, next to our new head chef, a woman named Sophia who made the best arroz con gandules north of San Juan. And in the back, leaning against an SUV, almost out of sight, were Luca, his arm long out of its sling, and Mateo. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was in dark jeans and the same gray quarter zip I'd seen him in before, just an anonymous face in the crowd. He was keeping his promise. This was my stage, not his. "Hi, everyone, now," I said, and the microphone gave a little squeal. I tapped it. "Sorry, I'm Ava Torres. 6 months ago, I was a waitress. I was a waitress who was taught that the most important thing in a restaurant was the assertiveness of the truffle oil." A few people who knew the story chuckled. I was taught that a meal was a privilege, something you earned with a good credit card. I was taught that some people, I nodded toward the street, were just cracks in the glass, a smudge on the view. I took a deep breath. Hearth is here. To say that is a lie. A meal is not a privilege. It is a right. It is the fundamental, non-negotiable right to be treated as a human being. The men and women who will eat here, they're the ones welding the steel, cleaning the offices, and driving the trucks that keep this city running. We are not giving them anything. We are just finally seeing them, and we are giving them back the dignity that the system tries to strip away every single day. The applause was warm and real. "I'm not the hero of this story," I said, looking over the crowd. "The heroes are the people who, when they had nothing, shared it. They're the people who come here after a long shift, not just to eat, but to volunteer." I looked to the side. "And the hero is the woman who taught me, and my investor, that you don't turn a blessing into a transaction. Ladies and gentlemen, the godmother of the Hearth Network, Elena Romano." Elena, her face glowing, stepped forward. She was wearing a bright blue dress, and she didn't just cut the ribbon with the oversized scissors. She attacked it, severing it with a triumphant snap. As the crowd surged in, drawn by the smell of Big Mike's and Sophia's cooking, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Councilwoman Lee. "Incredible speech. Ava," she said, her politician's smile firmly in place. "The mayor's office is very impressed. We've been talking. We'd like to propose a pilot program, a city-funded voucher system for hot meals with Hearth as the exclusive partner. A, say, 3-month trial." I looked at her. The old Ava would have wept with gratitude. A city contract, a partnership. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of. But the new Ava, the director, saw the fine print. "A 3-month trial," I repeated, my voice pleasant. "So, you'd get the photo op, the press release about public-private partnerships just in time for the budget hearings, and in 3 months, when the press moves on, the program vanishes. And I'm left explaining to 1,000 families why the city decided they're not worth feeding anymore." Her smile faltered. "Thank you for the offer, Councilwoman," I said. "But we're not interested in a pilot. We're interested in policy. You want to partner with us? You come back to me with a line item in the permanent city budget. You come back with a 5-year commitment. We're not a photo op. We're a solution. You and the mayor are welcome to join us, but we are not here for your PR." She stared at me, her political brain recalculating. She wasn't angry. She looked impressed. "I see," she said. "I'll be in touch. Director Torres." She walked away, not toward the food, but back to her car, her phone already to her ear. I let out a breath. I just gambled with the city, and it felt right. That night, I sat alone in the new, quiet office of Hearth Number 2. It smelled like fresh paint and pine sol. I took a postcard from my bag. It was a picture of the You Are Seen mural. I turned it over and started to write. Querida Abuela. It's been a long time. I'm sorry I haven't been able to visit. The $16,800 debt, you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's handled. I have a new job. I'm the director of 2 community kitchens, one in Harlem and one we just opened here in Brooklyn. We feed hundreds of people every night. Real food on real plates. I used to be so ashamed. Abuela, I was ashamed of being poor. Ashamed that I couldn't afford my degree. Ashamed of the debt. I spent my whole life looking down, afraid someone would see how broke I was. I'm not ashamed anymore. My new job, it taught me to look up. Con proud I see people. Abuela. I'm proud that I finally see them. And they see me. Te amo. Come visit soon. I'll make you a real meal. Ava. I was sealing the envelope when a shadow fell across my desk. I looked up. It was Luca. Wasn't smiling. Director, he said, his voice flat. He was holding a 9x12 manila envelope. No name, no return address. This was left at the front door of the Harlem location. For you. My blood went cold. Left by who? The volunteer at the door didn't see, just found it. I took it from him. It was heavy. I tore it open. There was no letter, just a single, high-resolution satellite photograph. I stared at it. It was an industrial park. Warehouses, docks. I recognized it. It was the Red Hook Pier District. One of the warehouses was circled in red. Victor's old headquarters. I don't understand, I said. He's in a federal prison. He's not getting out for 30 years. This is nothing. He's gone, Lucas said, his voice grim. His organization isn't. His lieutenants are fighting over the scraps, and someone just sent you this. It's not a threat. Ava, it's a message. We know who you are. We know who you're with. We're still here. I felt the old fear, the coldness of the alley creep back in. The game wasn't over. It was never going to be over. The door opened. It was Mateo. He'd been waiting outside. He took one look at the photo in my hand, at the color drained from my face, and his expression hardened into the cold mask I hadn't seen in months. Luca, he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous, quiet place. Find out who sent it. I want a name by midnight. Boss? No, I said. Both men looked at me. I stood up, my hands shaking, and I folded the photograph. I put it back in the envelope, and... No, Mateo, I said, my voice clear and strong. You don't send Luca out to find a name. You don't meet them in the dark. That's the old way. That's his way. Ava, this is a direct threat. And we will handle it, I said, walking over to him. We will take this envelope and this photograph, and we will give it to the U.S. Attorney's Office. We will file a report. We will tell them that Victor's old crew is still active, and we will let them handle it. I put my hand on his arm. You said it yourself. He's a cornered animal, but we're not. We have the light. We have the press. We have the city. We have transparency. That's our armor, Mateo, not the shadows. He looked down at my hand, then up at my face. The coldness in his eyes was at war with something else, with the promise he'd made. He was the bomb, and I was, once again, asking him not to explode. He closed his eyes, just for a second, and let out a long breath. When he opened them, the bomb was disarmed. Okay, Ava, he said, his voice rough. We do it your way, as equals. He turned to Luca. You heard the director. Bag it. Get it to the feds in the morning. Cooperate fully. Luca looked relieved. He nodded, took the envelope, and disappeared, leaving us alone. The silence in the office was heavy. I was still shaking. You're right, he said. It's hard to break old habits. I know, I said. We stood there for a long time. The mariachi music had faded. All I could hear was the rain, which had started to tap against the window. It was a cold, miserable-sounding drizzle, the same kind of rain from that first night. He looked at the rain, then at me. "Ava," he said, and he seemed nervous. The man who had faced down federal agents and killers was nervous. "It's late. You've won. Again." He reached out, not to touch my shoulder, but just halfway. I was wondering, "Are you hungry?" I looked at him, confused. "Hungry?" "Dinner," he said, a small, tentative smile playing on his lips. "It's still raining, and I know this little place in the village, it's nothing fancy, but I'd like to take you." He paused and corrected himself. "I'd like to go with you, as equals." He was asking me on a date. After everything, after the arrests, the politics, the threats, the pasta at his mother's table, he was finally simply asking. A slow smile spread across my face. The fear was gone, replaced by a warm, quiet spark. "As equals," I confirmed. He held out his arm. I took it. We walked out of hearth number 2, leaving the lights on for the morning cleaning crew. We stepped out into the rain, but I didn't feel the cold. I glanced back just once. As we walked toward his car, the light from inside the kitchen silhouetted a new guest, an old man in a thin jacket who had just stepped in, looking for a late meal. One of the volunteers, a young woman who was probably in college, was wiping down the last table. She saw him. She stopped, put down her rag, and smiled. I saw the old man mouth the words, "Is it too late?" The volunteer walked over to him, put a hand on his arm, and led him toward a clean, warm table. "No, sir," I heard her say. "You're right on time. We see you. Thank you so much for listening to the story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Please drop a comment below to share your thoughts and let us know where you're listening. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories and like this video. And to help this story reach more listeners, please consider supporting us by hitting the hype button. We appreciate your support and can't wait to read your comments.